There's a really good quote of like, privilege is like asking a fish to tell you about the water that it swims in. It's water, it swims in it all the time, it just doesn't know what it is because they've never had to contemplate it. Yeah. That's kind of why it sustains.
How's it going, guys? I'm Alicia.
And I'm Shalina, and we're student ambassadors here at the University of Winchester. Welcome to the Inside Out.
This episode is called Privilege. We are here on campus at the University of Winchester with a group of students, this time on privilege with a particular focus on white privilege. Are all white people privileged? And how is privilege displayed in the media today?
90% of our university is white, so this is a great opportunity to openly and honestly debate with some of our students about the oppressions they face and if they feel it's a challenging environment because of it, and if so, what can be done to help. So thank you for joining us for our podcast today, guys. Obviously you don't know what we're talking about, so underneath this cardboard is what we are going to be talking about, so I'm going to reveal it.
Oh, wow.
Privilege, in brackets, white privilege, which we can touch on in due course, but just we're going to be talking about privilege in general. So just wanted to gather your understanding of what do you think privilege means? What does privilege mean to you?
There's a really good quote of like, privilege is like asking a fish to tell you about the water that it swims in. It's water, it swims in it all the time, it just doesn't know what it is because they've never had to contemplate it. Yeah. So I feel like that's kind of why it kind of sustains. I think in general, for me, everyone knows what privilege feels like, regardless of your background, social identity markers. But everyone also knows what oppression feels like. For me, I've got three things that potentially work against me not having any privilege, such as being overtly Muslim, woman, and a person of colour. But then at the same time, I know that I've got access to higher education, I work in a university, and that brings with it different kind of privileges. And so I feel like whenever we do want to discuss privilege, we can't always say to people, you're privileged and that's it. We have to realise that everyone knows what that feeling of privilege and oppression feels like, and in order to have those kind of meaningful discussions about what specifically white privilege really is and what it looks like.
I think Maisha's right, is, you know, like myself, I've got 6 kids that we're supporting as a couple, so our monthly budget is extremely low. So are we privileged? Not really, because we live really on the breadline every day. But then when you look at those families that can't feed the children and themselves, and you think, well, hang on a minute, I'm a little bit more privileged than they are. But then that guy who is a multimillionaire with a speedboat obviously is a lot more privileged than I am. You know, so you can see across the spectrum different scales of privilege.
It's kind of like if you don't go through it, people don't realise, and until you do.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing with white privilege. I went to private school, and it was like that. It was, the people who are at the top of our country have no empathy with anyone because the only people they know are people who are as rich as them. They did a documentary where one of the Conservative MPs tried to live on a council estate for a week. And I think it lasted one day. He had a secret £50 note in his shoe, Ian Duncan Smith. And then he ran away. He literally was like, oh, no, this won't prove anything. But they did it. They did a thing at my school as well, where they had kids from Liverpool come and do a school swap. So these kids from Liverpool who are from like a rough estate and thing, how it was edited was to make it look that they all hated it. They hated it and they wanted to go home and all this lot. Absolutely not true. They loved because they got a better education, they were listened to. And actually and it's sad because it was just like, and the posh kids went to there and they were like, oh, and they got the poshest kids they could find. I mean, literally, you couldn't understand them. That kind of like, plums in the mouth. And they were, oh, I hate it, but at least I get to go out and I can go and drink and go. That was just totally set up to create that divide, that the rich and the poor and and that's the whole thing. It's the same. If you keep people lower and squabbling against themselves, no one looks at the big picture.
Yeah. Well, I think all three of your points are really, really poignant. And you talk about privilege, and we're looking at in terms of like finances and what opportunities everyone are given. If we look at them face value on white privilege, do you think, in general, on face, people that are white have more privilege than those who don't because of the colour of their skin?
Take a monetary aspect out of it, because we've obviously seen the differences in that layer of privilege, but now just looking more specifically in skin colour.
Yes, they do. Simple
Elaborate.
as that. That's it. Game over. That's it. So,
because some people don't think they do, or they don't realise that they do. And why do you think? What would you say to them as to why you do?
They're absolutely wrong. Of course, white privilege. Not be funny. That's all they've known.
Yeah, but we know
because
that.
It's a generational thing, isn't it? So each generation is getting better. Yeah. So my children are much better than my parents were. Yeah, they don't see colour.
That's
No, hang on. No, they see the colour, but it doesn't have a factor for them.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, my best friend was black.
Yeah.
But he got so much racial abuse because he was black. But my kids don't see that. When they're a thing, it's just their friend.
But I feel like your children should see that. They should they should see colour. They should understand
they
that
know
there's
the difference between
Yeah.
and they ask the questions.
So perhaps the correct term is not they don't see colour, it's that they understand that everyone is human.
Yeah, that they understand that everyone's different, but it's that whole thing, isn't it? Whoever you meet, I don't care what colour you are, as long as you're a nice person. If you're an idiot, I don't want to speak to you. It doesn't matter where you are.
And schools are teaching more and more equality.
Not enough of it.
Not enough, but they do try and make sure that the school is a place of equality, and if they hear racial abuse going on, they try and step on it. But when I went through school, racial abuse was just something that happened on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Corner shops, they were always called shops.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you need to say the P word, Darren.
But that's.
I know you're saying it as a quote, but you would say the N word. You wouldn't say the full word. It's the same with the word that you're using right now.
Yeah, I agree.
wouldn't say it in
I know you're not, but still.
That is what it was in the 80s.
So what changed? Why do you feel like back then it was absolutely fine to say?
Because for me growing up, I thought that was like not right. It was my parents' generation that was sort of like doing it.
Did you do anything about that? I'm assuming your friends or people that you knew or knew of were saying it, right?
It was parents to children were more the way it was going.
Okay, fine.
Then my generation was like, no, we're not going to carry it on. We don't think it's fair. They're no different to us, as white people. They're still human beings. They've still got personality. They've still got a life. Why should we be being mean to them?
Because people don't understand the impact of the meaning on that word. You were just throwing it around flippantly like it was just part of the English language, and you didn't understand the history and the hurt by it.
My mum got that because she came from Africa. She's Indian, but she came here when she was like 6. So she grew up in England and went through the school system, and she had that word thrown at her, and she had like eggs chucked at her. But she said to me that later on in her working life, she saw that person who did that, and he literally was like, I'm so sorry that I did that. But what he perhaps wouldn't have known is what effect that had on her when she was that age. But I guess that is the changes that he did realise now, and he has realised now that it wasn't right. Hopefully things have changed.
I really fear for whenever I have children, because our teachers aren't trained to deal with racist abuse, religious abuse, and it's as simple as that.
Like if you think about like a reason why people don't want to report it, especially in the cases that Darren's just said, because you know that the responses of the said equality and diversity officers at school who say, oh, I'm really sorry you feel that way, or send the child home or suspend, and don't actually educate them as to why what they've said was wrong, is the fact that perhaps some of the reasons why people don't say anything or seek forward or like say anything to the person or to the teacher is because they know whatever response is going to be is not what they want to hear.
Definitely. I think there's a really good documentary of like Is Uni Racist that came out earlier this year.
Yes, I saw
And
that.
it was talking about how maybe a quarter of all students of colour have experienced racism, which I think is a lot higher, but none of them are there's not that many reporting. So universities think, yeah, it's fine, you know, we're not racist. Look at our
Statistics.
Look at our complaint statistics and stuff. And it's just like, no, you don't understand. I would actually see an increase of the level of reporting of racism as a really positive thing, because it just shows that your students and staff have faith in a system to kind of like right a wrong.
Yeah.
I would always tell like a person of colour or anyone who's experienced any type of kind of like ism to report it, right?
Yeah.
So it can be logged and dealt with and investigated. But at the same time, I feel like a hypocrite because I know I would never do that myself. There's a level of empowerment that comes with reporting, and I want to get to that point where I can get there, but I'm currently not, because that process of retelling, re-engaging, dealing with people that don't really understand how something that someone has said has made me feel, then the constant like mental fatigue of, am I overreacting? Maybe I'm just overthinking it. It's so much.
Because we're all students here, we kind of want to go back to the uni and what you think the uni's response is to white privilege, because the University of Winchester is, I think, 90% plus students are white. So what do you think the uni is doing or can do?
To start off with, I think we've been on the Student Academic Council for the past year. We've seen more people coming in and saying, hang on a minute, we need a person from this group to come in and a person from this group to come in. And there are more ethnic people being introduced onto the council to have the voice onto the academic council. You know, I think they've just taken the first step, to be honest.
That is a big step, though. I think the initial first step is actually having people to say something rather than just presuming, oh, this is how they feel, or I'm sorry that they feel that way.
It's a big step. It should be an automatic step.
Well, that's
it should
the
be a
thing.
thing.
Like, those places only came around because I was sat on Student Advisory Council, and I was the one saying,
Thank you, Maisha.
well, we've got like a commuting student rep and all these other kind of student reps, international student rep, Yeah. Why do we not have a Black, Asian, minority ethnic representative, and can we have a religious minority kind of rep as well? When I even brought up the thing of like, I think we need a religiously minoritized student rep. So largely speaking, from like being a Muslim at a Christian foundation university can feel like you're sidelined a lot of the time. And someone on the council kind of said like, well, we've already got a BAME student rep. Do we need a religious minoritized student rep? And I just sat there like, Yes. You've just conflated two really different things.
But that comes back to privilege. And why do you feel like you have the right to question that?
And it was challenged by, a senior staff member saying we shouldn't assume that, and it went ahead. And I think it's really great that we've got, BAME Ambassadors and we've got the Race Equality Action Group. I just want to see more of these things that are specifically for students of colour that don't always feel represented, rather than in like pockets. I want to see it kind of like embedded a lot more.
Yeah, I think in the end it goes back to education and what the uni can do, and there's clearly a lot that the uni is doing, I think.
Yeah,
we can't say that they're not doing anything, but there is still gap, I think, to
there
to
are
be
still
done.
some, exactly like the project like we're doing here now. These kinds of conversations are conversations that need to be had more regularly.
Yeah.
And we just want to make people's experiences at the university more safe and more comfortable.
And we hope
That's
this
what it
brings
is.
in more BAME students, more LGBT students, more disabled students. Anyway, guys, it was amazing. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
I feel like my brain's still like ticking. I could talk about it
My
for
brain is a
ages.
bit fried, I'm not going to lie. Yeah.